Welcome to the Legally Ever After Real Estate Podcast, where we help you build, protect, and pass on your assets. I'm your host, estate planning attorney, Pamela Moss-Garrett. Let's get started. All right, today we have Michelle Oddo from the Oddo Group with Luminate Home Loans, and she's going to be talking to us about how you can give your kids a chance, how you can really leverage real estate to set them up for success. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's jump into it. What is kind of your tip of how investors can really utilize rental property to help out their children?
Okay, great question. And I love talking about this because I'm passionate about it. I have two boys. One of them is a freshman in college and one's a junior. Some of these things I wish we would have done when they were younger. So I have tips for young, parents of young kids, and then of course, older kids. I think if you have young kids, to me, one of the best things you can do for them is purchase a property now, because kids, two reasons. One, it's going to be very difficult for kids to purchase properties 15, 18, 20 years from now, with where affordability is going and rates and just all the things that we're seeing happening in the market. So if you could buy a property today and you could buy a rental property that you put a renter in there who's paying that mortgage for you. So technically, I always say they're depositing money into your savings account shaped like a house, right? They're paying that mortgage down and that house is going to appreciate. So by the time your kid is, 18, 20, coming out of college, 22, 23, you've got a home that technically at that point, 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you've paid so much down on that balance, which technically your renters paid it, and that home is appreciated. You could end up, on a $500,000 home today, when I've done the math on it, and I've got, all the data here. You could end up with $600,000 in equity down the road, $700,000 in equity that you could then use and pull out to send your kid to college. You could actually, if they want to purchase a home, you could help them purchase that home at a reduced price. There's just so many things you could do. And 529s are great, and I don't have any issue with those. But this is just another tool in your tool belt, another way to really leverage some money today, have somebody else, a renter, help you build wealth and equity for your kids that then could be used for multiple reasons.
I love that. And it's so helpful and thinking through the numbers, because I think, hearing that number 5 to 600,000, if you're putting things in a 529 account, you're not going to get that type of return. I mean, they're great. They're a great tool, but this is so much more powerful.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest differences is that I think people forget this concept that, if you put $100,000 in the stock market or into a 529, it's only going to appreciate and grow at that face value of the 100. I mean, it will grow off of that. But if you take $100,000 and you buy a $500,000 property and you put 20% down, $100,000, you're actually leveraging that 100,000 and you're getting appreciation on a $500,000 asset. And if the market turns with real estate, that property is still yours. It doesn't go anywhere. Whereas the market, you could potentially, lose a lot of your asset. And so just as an example, I did some math before knowing I was going to be talking to you. If someone were to buy a $500,000 home today, then 15 years from now, with just a modest 4% appreciation, which of course we've all been seeing 20 and 30%, which is not sustainable. We don't want to have that continue, but at a modest average 4%, which is, over time, very average, that home over time would provide you with $646,000 in equity. Have it here. And that's just that 4% over 15 years with a renter that's with 100,000 down, with the mortgage being paid down and the property appreciating at 4%. So $646,000 in equity. If you put 100,000 in a 529, I don't know if in 15 years, we could. That's a whole nother actuary we'd have to run. But in this case, what a great tool to give your kids and lock in today's college prices. Because a college tuition today, on average, in a state college room and board, is about $25,000 a year. Like I said, I have a son who's a freshman this year, so we're dealing with this. And at $125,000 a year, $100,000 over 4 years, what's it going to be in 15 years? Well, there's a lot of sites for this online, you can go on and look. but the average cost of college tuition in 15 years, they're estimating to be what's 100,000 today would be like 224,000 in 15 years.
Wow.
So if you had that 600,000 in equity, you could pay for college, you could do a lot of things.
That's amazing. So you were starting with kind of talking about younger families.
Yeah.
What about people who have older children right now? What is your advice for them?
Right. Great question. So again, I wish we had done some of this. We do have some properties, but I didn't buy something when my kids were little with that goal of that being for them, in mind for them. So some of the things you can do if you have an older kid that's in college or getting ready to go to college, and we'll be doing this for ours. My cousin did it for her son, and we do it for a lot of clients, is you can actually purchase a property. So let's say your child, who's, I guess, an adult child, they're 19, but they're still on your dollar usually at some point. So you're going to, they're in college, they're a freshman, now they're a sophomore, and you're thinking about housing expenses. Well, what you can do is purchase a property that your child and a few of their friends can live in as roommates, and they're going to pay rent to you as the owner of the home and the landlord, which typically will cover that mortgage. So your child gets essentially free room, free housing, or very limited housing costs. And so it's not just the fact that they're going to get that reduced or remove that housing cost for your kid. But in addition to that, again, the property will appreciate, the balance will be getting paid down by those kiddos. And by the time your kid gets out of college, let's say 4 years down the road or whatever, if you did it in their second year, 2-3 years, you might put other renters in there down the road, or maybe that kid will stay there after college. But whatever it might be, the point is you're going to have equity in that home. And if you did have student loans, you could pull that equity out and pay off your student loans. So now you've got a property, free housing, and you've paid for your college. It's a win-win.
That's so smart. And you mentioned, a lot of your clients do that. A lot of your friends do that. And I'd imagine, if your kid's going to college out of state, you can still take advantage of that, right? You don't have to just do it here in Colorado. You could do it, in different parts of the country.
Yeah, for sure. And like an example is I have a friend who works in my building, is on this floor, and his son is going to college in Kansas. So his son is only a freshman. So what he did is he purchased a property in Kansas, and we helped him with the mortgage, and he purchased it as a second home. So he can literally put 10% down, and he'll go and visit and have a place to live and not have to pay rent or, pay for hotel expenses, et cetera. And he'll utilize it as a second home. But then next year, when his son is a sophomore, his son and some friends will be staying in the property. So using it in another way. And then down the road, if his son moves out, he can use it for other kids. It's very close to the campus, and and then if you have other kids that might go to the same school, they can come along and live in that property eventually. So all over the country, we're licensed in 35 states. So we do a lot of this type of thing all around the country. And it's just fun for me too, just to see the different properties available near these campuses and what's a really great investment for now and for the future for people.
That's so smart. And I know in talking with you, there's some kind of unique property tools for lending that you do with second homes. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and some of the strategies around that?
Sure. Yeah. And there are several. So just to break it down, you've got, if it's a true second home where you're not going to have a tenant in there, you're not going to rent it, you just want a second home to go. Another one of my friends has a daughter in Arizona. Well, they go so often, they bought a second home there. So you can put 10% down, and we have a product that is different than what you'll see with most mortgage lenders, because most mortgage lenders were subject to what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, their overlays. And they have these overlays. They're called LLPAs, or loan level price adjustments. It's an acronym. And basically, it's additional cost. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac came out in March of this year, 2022, and said, listen, we got to slow down the investors in a way. We really want to give new homeowners a chance to buy a home. So they put some really additional pricing on some of these products. They're still a great deal. And I know we want to talk a little bit about rates here in a little bit, but if you could get around that, it's even better. So we have this program through our bank. It's called the Federal Home Loan Bank Program, and it doesn't have any of those add-ons. So we really have, in my opinion, whenever we price these against other banks and lenders, we have the best pricing on this product, just because we don't have those loan level price adjustments. So you could buy a second home, 10% down, get great rates and fees. Another strategy is you could actually buy the property with your child if they have some credit. And
Okay.
and we can talk about how you help build your kids' credit so they are ready. You know, if they're maybe in high school, some things you can do to help them. But you could put them on the loan, even if they don't have income, as long as their credit is sufficient with you. Now it's an owner-occupied loan. You could do, 5% down and 3% down, 5% down, and that's actually an owner-occupied loan. So you get the benefit of the lower rate, the lower down payment, and you're just, as a parent, a non-occupying co-borrower. So that's another strategy where it's an owner-occupied loan for your kid. A third strategy would be just a true investment property, and that's where you would put down anywhere from 15 to 25% down payment. It will carry a higher interest rate, but you can legitimately just rent that property out without your kid being in there as a true investment rental property. And that's another strategy if you're buying it now in preparation for your kid down the road. So those would be 3 different ways that you could do this, where it's either a true second home, it could be a second home really, but for your kid, where it's an owner occupied, or a true investment property.
Yeah. And I loved what you were describing about kind of that long-term planning, because really setting up your kids so that they have good credit. And what were your thoughts around that specifically?
Yeah. So, a lot of people don't think about this, but there's so many things you can do ahead for your kids. For one thing, I recommend everybody do some kind of monitoring on your kids' credit, because even as young kids, credit can get, there's a lot of fraud, right? And people do steal identity. So if you have a kid whose identity has been stolen, I hate to scare people, but it's just a fact, and they're using that social security number and they're obtaining credit, you may not know to your kids very far down the road as an adult that they have a problem. So that's the first thing I always recommend, is monitor their credit. There's a lot of services out there. You can do LifeLock. You can do a lot of different things. The second thing is, once they're a little bit older, like maybe in high school, you can add them to one of your accounts as an authorized user. You don't even have to give them a card technically if you don't want to. But if they're added to your card as an authorized user, then they get the benefit of your long-standing credit on that card. And obviously you want to use a card that maybe has a nice high limit that you keep a low balance on and you're paying on time. So that will really help their credit. And then a third option is, once they're in college, or maybe as a senior in high school or a freshman in college, maybe purchase them a credit card that you are a co-signer on. And that just helps them. Maybe they put a little bit of their expenses on that every month and keep a low limit, but they can charge just a little bit, but get used to having a little bit of credit and using it wisely. Because I think we've all heard the stories, and even know people, and some of us personally, that, used credit when they were younger, and without financial literacy or any experience or someone walking you through the best ways to do that. Some kids just feel like they have like free money, right? And you want to make sure that they know how to use those cards and use them wisely, so that they can build credit in a way that's going to help them in the future.
Yeah, I've heard so many horror stories of and friends and people I knew, because when they start off at college, they have those credit card companies with the booths and the cute people working at them, and people get these really high interest credit cards. They don't know what to do. They're on their own for the first time, and really taking control, really helping your kids in advance is so helpful. One of the things that you mentioned is kind of this planning ahead. And when someone is kind of unsure which strategy they should use, how far in advance should they be talking to a lender like you to really put together a plan? Because I've heard so many things now that I'm like, oh, I need to do this when my daughter gets older. I wouldn't even have thought about it until after the fact. So how far in advance do you suggest people reach out to you?
Obviously the sooner the better. Even if they just had a baby, even, or even before that, a lot of it would obviously come down to having the resources to do it. So if you have a young kiddo and you've been investing, or you have a 401k, you have some equity in a home, it's a good strategy. Like, I just talked to a client yesterday who was referred to me by their realtor, and he is a very young, newly married guy, young to me, he's in his 30s, and he has a baby, two little babies at home, and he was saying, I'm realizing that I need to take some equity out of my home. So many people have owned homes over the last 5 to 10 years, even the last 3 years, and have realized amazing appreciation. All of these homes have built so much appreciation. And the average person, the average in America, I know this is a big average, has like $300,000 in equity, which seems crazy, but there's just a lot of equity. And when it sits in your home, I had a friend of mine say, the house doesn't know if there's a loan on it or not. The house is going to appreciate no matter what, right? So if you have this money sitting in your home and it's just sitting there and your house is going to appreciate no matter what, it can be really wise to talk to somebody, an advisor, a mortgage advisor like myself, and just let's take a look at it. Like, how much equity do you have in your home? And could you pull some of that out with a home equity line of credit or a refinance or something like that, and take that money and leverage it and use it somewhere else? And if you're not ready, that's okay. But let's look at what it would take to get ready and how far off are you and what do we need to do to get there? Because, without a plan of where you want to go, it's very difficult to get there, right? You need that roadmap. So I don't think any time is ever too soon. I would say it's too soon if you're brand new, you don't even own a home, or it's your first home and you barely have a down payment, you're not probably ready. But if you have a little bit of equity in your home and you're starting to think about a family, or you have a young family, that would be the perfect time to at least explore it and just see if this is something that might be a good plan for you.
I love that. And one of the things that you mentioned is interest rates right now. And I know you've been doing a lot of education because I follow you and I talk to you. But for people who right now feel a little nervous about interest rates and where they are and where they're going, what would you tell them when it comes to investing right now?
I totally get it. I mean, when you go from rates, like my first home, my rate was in the 8s. So, and it was coming down. So that was actually like low. Like I thought that was a good deal back then. But when rates have been in the 2s and 3s for the last several years, and they've been artificially held low through various reasons without us getting into just government, some Fed policies and things that took place that kept our rates artificially low. And so when you go from the 2s and the 3s to the 7s, like that's a shock to anybody's system. And then couple that with the appreciation we've been having on homes, it creates a huge affordability problem. So I totally get it. But there are some strategies out there, and the things that we're really advising people is you also today are able to get a home at a much better deal with having a seller actually contribute to some of your closing costs that you maybe wouldn't have been able to do a year ago. So although a year ago, that ship has sailed, no, you're not going to get a 3% rate. And you could say, oh, look at the opportunity I missed out on, and be really upset about that. But on the flip side, you might go, wow, I'm also getting a house for $60,000 less than I probably would have been able to obtain a year ago, because there would have been 20 people fighting you for that home. You would have had to offer over, probably waive your rights to get an appraisal, just so many other things that were going on in the market. So we need a balanced market, and interest rates rising creates a balanced market. It happened very fast. It is a shock, and I get that part. But what people can do is they can lock in a good home price today, and you're never stuck with the mortgage interest rate because people refinance. We always refinance clients down the road. You just do. It's kind of like people that say, I'm going to drive this car forever. And then 5 years down the road, they're getting a new car. You always think like, oh, this is the mortgage I'm going to have forever, but it's typically not. And interest rates will come down. They'll have to come down, because what will happen is when inflation is high, interest rates have to be raised because we have to slow down spending. Inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. So when you have too many dollars in the market, which we've had, with too few goods, too low of inventory, supply chain issues, all the things, you have to raise interest rates to slow down the spending. But then what happens is you create a recession. You do create the effect you needed. You create the slowdown of the spending, and then all of a sudden rates go up, rates come down when we get that recession. And when rates come down, you can refinance. So you're getting the best of both worlds right now in a way, because you're actually getting a property at probably a reduced price from what you would have had a year ago or a year and a half ago or 6 months ago. You are going to pay a little bit higher interest rate, but you're going to have the seller help contribute and maybe pay some closing costs, help you buy that rate down. And then a year from now, or a year and a half, or whatever it might be, somewhere between a year and 18 months, we think, rates will come down. They'll have to, and then you'll be able to refinance that loan. There's also some strategies with some adjustable rate loans, or what we call a 3-2-1 buy down. So the seller can contribute some money to help buy that rate down artificially for the first year, 3% below the market rate. second year, 2% below the market rate. So just lots of great strategies out there. I mean, the big concept really is lock in today's home price. You might not love the interest rate, but if you can buy it and afford it, do it, refinance down the road, and then you get the best of everything.
Yeah, I feel like even just hearing you describe the best of everything, it really does make sense. And all of us remember during the pandemic and the last few years, how crazy the market has been and how much overpriced people had to pay. And so you're getting that lower purchase price now, and then you can just refinance. It's such a great opportunity right now for investors. And a lot of investors are jumping in and purchasing things right now because they are aware of it. When people are kind of looking for lenders, one of the things I love about you, Michelle, is you have so much experience and you come from this place of heart where you really care about your clients, you care about the strategies. When people are looking for a lender, what are the things they should be looking at to make sure they're finding the right fit for what they want to do?
So that is really something that's near and dear to my heart, because there are so many people out there, when we had such a crazy industry, we had 4 times the amount of volume over the last couple of years. We had we had record volume, things that we've never seen in history. So every, inexperienced person that was maybe working at, a retail store or something, who knows, everybody jumped into lending. And so it really scares me when I'm talking to a client and they'll say, oh, I was referred to so-and-so, but I'm shopping around. And I'll say, well, let's look them up online. We go to LinkedIn and we see they've been doing this like a year or 2 years. So the first thing I would say is look for experience. Definitely look for experience. Look them up online. Look at their reviews. Look at their history, their track record. Not to throw bankers under the bus. There's a lot of great bankers out there, and some of them are my dear friends. But there are some banks that are notorious for, they don't really have to do an amazing job because they have clients just walking in, right? They don't have to work off of referral. Whereas like an independent mortgage broker or banker, we really have to work super hard. We're unemployed every single month. Like we have to get every month, we're out there, working as hard as we can to have an amazing experience for our clients and our realtors. So we get those referrals. So I really feel like experience, check out the reviews. And then how did you get referred to them? Is it just like it's your neighbor, but they don't really, or is it somebody that your realtors worked with for lots of years and they've had amazing experiences with? And just make sure that you're really vetting them. And then the last thing is, do you like them? Like you really have to have a connection. You're going to be working with this person for probably a minimum of 30 days and more like it could be several months. And there has to be a connection, and you brought up heart. They have to have your best interests at heart. And you're going to know that if somebody's pushing you into deals and products and pushing you at a higher price point and things, that just doesn't feel comfortable. One of the things that we always do is look at your budget and make sure that you're comfortable. Just because you qualify for this doesn't mean that that's what you should be buying. Let's make sure it's the right thing for you. And if it's not something that, that you feel good about, then your lender shouldn't be pushing you to do it. And then of course, what type of products, and doing a little bit of rate shopping and research, but at the same time, you can get really spun out online with these online lenders. There's a lot of bait and switch. I tell people, be very careful. We see it all the time. And a lot of those places are true call centers. So they might have an amazing rate posted online. It is a bait and switch, or it's a hook. And, it all comes down to margin. I mean, it's just like a store, a Walmart's going to have a different margin than maybe, a Nordstrom or whatever. And you don't have to go to the highest end. But if you're somewhere in the middle, the margin might be slightly higher. Maybe the rate's not the lowest bare bottom rate in the market, but the service is going to matter. And if you have a person working in the call center and they don't have any experience and they're getting paid very, very little for their skill set, it's going to come out. Your process is going to happen and you're going to get into underwriting. And that's when everything unravels if it's not done correctly. And there's so many things. It's a very complex process. It's not like buying shoes online. So you definitely want an experienced person. One of my things is I was an underwriter for a lot of years. So I know what can go wrong. We make sure everything's right before it ever gets that far. So whoever you're working with, I would just really make sure that you feel good about that piece.
Yeah, I've heard so many horror stories, and I'm sure you have the same, where it's someone that's new and not experienced, or one of these call centers, and the whole deal falls through because it was this bait and switch situation, or people get into something that they didn't realize what that bait and switch was going to be. And then they're locked in because they don't want to lose the house. And it really, really does make a difference to work with someone that's quality. And another thing that you talked about was kind of the difference between someone like you that can offer lots of different products versus someone who is captive, maybe at a bank, that it's only that one option. And so you get to bring kind of the best from the marketplace, from my understanding, because you have so many more options.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, we have access to the open market, right? So as a correspondent lender, we still close in our name. We're our own underwriter. We fund our own loans, all that. We're licensed in like 35 states through our bank affiliation, but we have the ability to price and use guidelines and products from many, many investors out there. So, I love analogies. I think of a restaurant, like you really can't go to a pizza restaurant and get Chinese food. Like you're going to get what's on their menu. That's it. So if you go to something that has a lot more options, then if you don't want pizza and you want Chinese, maybe that's available. So in this case, it might be what you qualify for. Like some lenders just won't do certain types of condos. Like those come up a lot, that condos fall apart once they're in underwriting because something popped up that they don't like. Well, there's a lot of lenders out there and they all have different guidelines. All lenders look different, have different guidelines about self-employment, how much decline in income they'll allow, what they'll allow for add backs. I mean, there's just so many different products. There's some people that their tax returns, they have way too many write-offs as a self-employed person, but their bank statements are super strong and we can do a bank statement product. So just having all these different available products to us and being astute enough to understand how to underwrite that loan up front so we can figure out where that loan needs to go. Because if you don't even understand what you're looking at, how do you know if it fits or not? So again, that's where just that experience and obviously that heart to make sure we're doing the best thing for the client and we're going to give them the best deal that fits their situation is just really important to us.
Michelle, what is the best way for people? I know you have a great, amazing team. What's the best way for people to reach out to you and your team?
Well, I'm very available through email. So email is great. I think you're going to put it below or put it somewhere on here. But my email, which is michelle.oddo@goluminate.com. My text is amazing. I love text. I'm always available on text. So my cell phone could be a phone call, could be a text, and email. Really, all of those I'm equally available on all of those. Of course, text is always the quickest way to get somebody, but I would say any of those are great ways to get me. And some people just go on Facebook and message me, and that works too. So whatever, Instagram, and whatever, I'm really available all over the place. And I'd love for people to reach out, even if it's just with questions. I talk to a lot of realtors and many clients that are already involved and things are going south. People talk to me on YouTube all the time across the country. This is happening, and I'll answer the question. Even if I don't have the loan, it's okay. I'm really about educating and making sure that we're helping people make great decisions.
I love all your stuff on YouTube and on social media. So I'll definitely share in the show notes all of those links because you provide so much value, so much education. It's amazing. So the final question that I ask everyone is, what is your legacy? What is the legacy you are building, Michelle?
Wow. Okay. So, I would say, so my father has passed away, but he was he was a big influence on me. And in fact, he was in the mortgage business. I grew up with a salesman father. He sold insurance and did mortgages. And my whole life, I was just taught to ask questions, debate, make sure I'm being a critical thinker. So I mentioned I have two boys, 2 teenagers, and a stepson. Actually, I have three grown men in my life. But my legacy that I want to leave, and something that I feel is just so important in our world today, is to teach my kids to have critical thinking and to ask questions and to not take everything at face value and not just because somebody tells you this is the way it is, and not in an argumentative way. I don't mean it like that, but, I was raised by a father who was very, just such a gift to me that he taught me to say, well, why do you think that? Well, are you sure that's right? Well, why don't you call their manager and make sure that doesn't sound right? And why do you think that? Or why would you do that? And even if he disagreed, give me the platform, versus that old school thought of like, I'm your parent because I said so. Like, he was never like that. He wanted to know why I felt that way or why I believe that. And we've always instilled that in our kids. And I feel like if I do one thing, I want my kids to know that, they have the ability to ask questions, to dig deeper, to make sure they understand it, to believe what they're doing and believe in what they're doing and why they're doing it, and to understand it. Because I think that's the best wisdom that you can give somebody, is for them to not be afraid to ask questions, advocate for themselves, and really understand why they're doing what they're doing so they can make good decisions. Even when I'm dealing with clients, I'll have clients sometimes that are afraid to ask questions, or they don't want to be confrontational. It's like, if you don't ask those questions, how do we know what the hesitations are? How do we know if it's right or wrong what you're thinking? And that's the best way for somebody to really, I think, have a successful life and just work through problems, is being able to ask questions. And that's my legacy. And even my staff, my team, everything is open door. Like, you can't say anything that's going to hurt my feelings. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. That's my legacy.
That is so powerful. And I love that so much, Michelle. I was thinking about that when you and I chatted to prepare for this. And I do feel like there's so much conditioning in our society, especially with women, to, not ask questions, to be kind, to and it's not in a mean way, but that critical thinking, that ability to advocate for yourself and to advocate for your clients makes such a huge difference in what you can provide. And I know you are just a leader in the industry. And I know that so much of that is because you have that ability to push the envelope and get people what they need.
Right. And to your point, like, even if it's, let's say it's an underwriting thing or whatever it is, it's like, well, hold on, why are we doing that? Is that right? Let's double check. Because so much is uncovered when you do that. And it's very powerful. I mean, it's never, if I'm wrong, great. I want to know that. I'm okay with that. But let's understand why we're doing what we're doing. And I love that you said as women, because of course, we've come a long way, right? Women have come a long way, and we definitely have so many leadership positions, and we're definitely not in a place where, we could say, well, we don't get a fair shake. I think we do, but I think that a lot of that falls on us, and it's up to us to be a voice, be the voice in the room. Doesn't mean obnoxious, argumentative, none of that, right? But just be a smart and wise voice that brings something to the table that is helpful. And let's make sure that we're all doing that we all understand why we do what we do, or whatever it is that we're talking about. Yeah.
Well, I love it. Thanks so much, Michelle. Thanks for being on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was great. I wish we could talk longer.
Me too.
But yeah, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. And Pam, I know you're an amazing resource too. If people are going to buy investment properties or thinking about doing these things for their kids, you definitely want a good attorney in your corner, because you not only want to set up the loan piece correctly, but also the legal aspect and making sure you're protecting that property and protecting your kids, so that property can be something that they receive in the best way possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
If you need an updated will, trust, or estate plan, and you are a Colorado resident, we would love to be your estate planning law firm. Give us a call at 720-706-0036 to schedule your complimentary 15-minute call. You can also directly schedule at lawmother.com/go. If you liked this episode and you want to learn more, you should definitely check out my international best-selling book, Legally Ever After. It's available on Amazon as both an ebook, a paperback, and an audio version. And if you'd like a free chapter, head over to lawmother.com/LEA.